Welcome back, YouTubers. Today, well, I'm back online again. It's been about a month since I've posted a video. As promised, I'm going to put a couple up for you this weekend. The first one I'm going to do, because I noticed I got a lot of messages from you guys. You're starting to buy your Taranis radios, and you're going to need to know what to do next. This channel is pretty much dedicated to the OpenTX firmware that you're going to be installing in the radio. So I figure in this video what we'll do is we'll go ahead and show you how to install that firmware in that radio so we can get started. There's a couple of things you're going to need. For one, you're going to need your radio. For two, you're going to need a USB-A cable. The A means it's that old flat looking plug that goes to a USB mini. Now this is not a micro, this is a mini. Mini is a little bit bigger than the micro. It's kind of an older version small USB cable that they use with some older devices, cameras and such back in the day. So if you get your hands on one of those and you got yourself a Taranis radio, you're ready to go. It's a pretty simple procedure. I want to talk to you for a moment about your radio and congratulate you on purchasing your radio. FrSky has a whole series of radios out there that's actually fantastic to use, and it really doesn't matter which one you buy. It's just basically the flavor in which you desire. The one I use primarily is this X10S, which is a Horus built by FrSky. I run the OpenTX firmware on that as well. But still, to this day, my favorite radio is going to have to be this Taranis Plus. There's really no difference in the radios. They do the exact same thing. They're both 16 channel. The only difference is the X10S, well, it's got a little scrolly thing and push buttons for navigating the menus, and the Taranis just has push buttons, and the screen on the X10S is in color. This one is not, but there is no difference in the way that the radio functions whatsoever. They're both 16 channel. They're both fantastic radios. As you can see, the X10S is a little bit bigger. It's bulkier. It's heavier. It's got a more, what I would say, a robust antenna on it. The Taranis, when you purchase it, the antenna that's on it is a fixed antenna. And that antenna, if you're not careful, if you slam your lid from your case on it or whatsoever or anything like that, or set it down a little too hard and it bumps the antenna, you can actually crack it right where the antenna hinges. And that you don't want to do, because that's pretty difficult to replace. On mine, I've already done that. I've already damaged the antenna, so what I did is I replaced the antenna with a detachable antenna, which is what I would highly recommend. So in the event that you do break your antenna, you can replace it with one of these little jacks, or these antenna jacks, and put on there one of these little screw-on antennas. Now the antenna that comes with the Taranis is, I think, a 2 dBm or 2.5 dBm, something like that. I upgraded to a 5 dBm, which gives me about 30% more range. That's what they say. I don't know. I've never really tested it in the field to find out. I've never really had an issue with any of the FrSky equipment when it comes to range anyway. So you can purchase the little antenna modification kit online. You just Google it, antenna mod for Taranis, and it'll come up with a little package you can buy, and it runs about $6. The issue is soldering it to the board is like brain surgery. They're extremely fine little wires and extremely difficult to do. If you're very good at soldering, it shouldn't be an issue for you. If you're not, you can go ahead and modify the top of your radio and install the jack. Then send the radio off to a loft if you'd like, and they'd probably be glad to go ahead and solder it in for you, as they did mine. First radio I did was a success. The second radio I did, which is this one, I ended up destroying the module in it. They ended up replacing the module and soldering in my own modified antenna for me for about $60 plus shipping, which was a great deal. But if anything happens to your antenna, that's what I would recommend going ahead and doing. Or if you're still in the process of deciding which radio to buy from FrSky, and you do choose to purchase the Taranis Plus, I would recommend going with the one that is the special edition. Special edition Taranis Pluses, they come with different skins. You can get them in camouflage, you can get them in carbon fiber, and you can get them in different colors, and they come automatically with the detachable antennas, so it's already upgraded. It's about $50 more, but it's worth the hassle, believe me. With that said, let's just say you purchased your radio now and you're ready to get started. The first thing I recommend is going ahead and updating to the latest and greatest firmware from OpenTX. What you're going to want to do, and it's pretty simple, you're going to want to go to their website. These radios are very easy to upgrade. the first version that came out that wasn't the Plus version was a little harder. Your Windows computer or your computers in general, they didn't have the drivers that supported being able to see that radio connected to your computer. With the XD Plus, they kind of solved that issue by building in the drivers or putting what they call a bootloader built into the radio, so your computer automatically sees it as drives. So you don't have to worry about modifying your home computer anymore to be able to see this radio to do what you need to do. It's all pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and easy to do. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and upgrade this radio. I'll show you exactly what to do. I'll show you what to do to the SD card that is built inside the radio. There's some files you're going to want to put on that. There's SD card contents that you're going to want to put on that SD card. We can even put a sound package on it so that you can assign through special functions various sounds and stuff that will initialize when you flip certain switches or do certain things, you know, to your liking or whatever you want to do. I like mine with sounds, so I put sounds on it, and they got all kinds of different sound packages you can get off of the OpenTX website or from different websites that are modified to work with it. They've got an Amber Pack, which is kind of a female sexy voice that you can use that your radio will have, or you can go with just the standard Tyrannus voice, which is what I'm going to do here today. But what you want to do, the first thing you need to do, get your radio, get your cord, and you want to go to a website. The website is called OpenTX.org. And when you open up that website, you're going to see the page that looks just like this. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to scroll down to where it says News. Okay, at the top part of that where it says News, if you look at that top line, it says OpenTX 2.2.4, and it's got a date, and that is the most recent date, which is July 11th, 2019. So they've come out with a new package already for the OpenTX, new firmware, a new program to be able to upgrade your Tyrannus radio or any of your FrSky products, or not even FrSky, but anything that you want to install OpenTX on that will accept it. Today we're going to do the Tyrannus. So what you do is you would click on this, that top line, and then you scroll back down again and you're going to see the installer files. When you get down here at the bottom of the page, you're going to see OpenTX 2.2.4 Windows installer. That's if you're running Windows and you want to install that program on your Windows computer. You go down two more lines and you're going to see the OpenTX Companion 2.2.4. That is for the Mac OS X. That's if you're running an Apple computer or whatever, you can install OpenTX on that as well. To be able to do all your flashing and stuff of your FrSky radio systems. The one underneath that, you're going to see that's a Linux deb package for the 64-bit. Okay, deb package, if you're familiar with Linux at all, that's going to include operating systems such as Ubuntu, Linux Mint, you know, or Debian, or anything that runs the .deb. Most of your Linux packages these days, except for like Red Hat, which runs RPM and stuff like that. And the one underneath that is 2.2.4. It's a PPA package for Ubuntu, the ones running the old i386s with the AMD 64s. Today we're going to be running off the Windows installer. I already have the OpenTX installed on this computer. It is a program. It's called Companion. It allows you to do whatever you need to do when installing firmware or making changes and such to your radio off the computer. It's already installed on my computer, so when you go ahead and you download that file, you would of course click Run and allow it to run, give it permission and stuff, and it would install like anything else and put a little icon on your desktop or whatever, and then you have the program to do what you need to do with your radio system. But I already have it installed, so we're going to go ahead and open it up, and when you open it up, it looks like this. Okay, and there's got various little icons and stuff up there with things to do, and if you're uncertain about what to do, there's websites that can tell you how to do certain things on it, but it's pretty much self-explanatory. If you highlight over a specific icon or whatever, it's going to tell you what it does. It's going to tell you, like I'm highlighting over that little red one there, it's going to tell me right back up to radio. This one here is read models and settings from radio, which is something you're going to want to do anytime you do any software upgrades to your radio. If you've got models on your radio already, you're going to want to read those models off of that radio before you do any upgrades. You know, in case something goes wrong, you've got a way to recover those files. So you've got that, and then you have, let's see here, this one here is going to be write firmware to radio, and the other one should be read firmware from radio. So I always recommend backing up your radio before you do any upgrades. In case something goes wrong, you've saved your current firmware and your current models and settings to your OpenTX. You've saved the folder on your desktop or whatever in case you've got to restore your radio. You've got all the merchandise you need to put it back to where it was. But the first thing you need to do is, if you look at that top section up there, you're going to see a little cog, like a gear. It's up here in about the middle of these icons. You're going to want to press on that. That's called Settings. And what you have to do in there is you have to select what type of radio you have from the little drop down. And right now it says FrSky Horus X10. Okay, that's not the radio that we're going to be messing with today. So we're going to hit that little drop down menu, and we're going to choose the top one up there that says the X9D Plus, because we're going to be playing with the Taranis Plus today. That's the X9D Plus. So you select that. So what this system is going to do when you select that is it's going to put in there everything that has anything to do with the Taranis Plus radio. And you can name it whatever you want. If you want to name it anything, I'm just going to say, just for the sake of this video, just leave it Mike. Now, here's something that's important here. If you look at this other little drop down, all these little square boxes and stuff, these are packages you can install with your firmware on your radio to get it to do various things. A lot of these things, I personally don't really know what they are because I've never installed them and I never really needed to. But there's one here in specific that is called multi-module. And I would always recommend that you install that, and I'm going to tell you why. When you're moving to FrSky Taranis, you're going to probably have some airplanes, or you're going to maybe want to buy some airplanes that are what they call bind and fly. Well, you're going to need that package installed in your OpenTX to be able to operate those airplanes right from your Taranis radio, your FrSky radio. That's right, your FrSky radio will fly your Horizon Hobby bind and fly airplanes all day long. There's a thing you do need to purchase to install in the radio to do that, and I'm going to show you in the next video what that is. But right now we're just doing specifics on installing the firmware in your radio, the latest and greatest, for the very first time, so that you can have everything that you need to operate your Taranis radio and not be limited at all. So I've selected multi-module because I want to install that package so I can do what I want to do with this radio later on. Now at the bottom, you see down there it says mode. Okay, we're mode 2 here in the United States. If you're flying over there in Europe where your throttle is over on your right-hand side, that would be mode 1. So I'm going to leave that at mode 2. And if you look at the default channel order, that would be at the bottom drop-down box. It says TAER. That stands for throttle, aileron, elevator, and rudder. That's my default channel selection. And that's the way I like the radio to set it up on the mixer page. So it'll set channel 1 as throttle, channel 2 as aileron, 3 as elevator, and channel 4 as rudder. I also like to append the version number to the firmware file name, and I like to check the box that says offer to write the firmware to the radio after you download it. Okay, that's what I want to do. And the reason I want to append the version of the number of the firmware file name is because when I go in my radio, if I ever want to check to see what firmware is in the radio, it'll tell me what it is, what version. So that's why you check that box. Now, what you do after you get all those little things selected that you want is you just go down here to the bottom and you click OK. So that's what we do there. Now, you have to prepare your radio now at this point, and that's easy to do. So what you need to do is, like I said, you're going to need your USB cord. You're going to need to enter this radio into what they call bootloader mode. That's pretty simple. The way you do that, bootloader mode means you're going into a specific system of this radio that will allow you to make changes to the EEPROM. In other words, write your new firmware, access the SD card, things like that. So we're going to go ahead and take the 2 bottom trim tabs, push them inward, and while holding them inward, flip the radio on. And you get a screen like this. That means you've entered bootloader. So now at this point, what all you need to do is you need to connect your USB cable to the back of the radio, and then you're going to want to go ahead and plug the radio into your USB port of your computer. All right. And it's going to pop up a couple of boxes. It's just showing you, almost like files, because you've got an SD card, which in my specific case, the SD card is being considered drive D, and the radio EEPROM itself is being considered as drive F. So we're going to take this thing here, and we're going to get rid of the box, just shrink them down or whatever, get them out of your way. And then we're going to go over here to where this arrow says download. Click on the download, and it's going to download the version 2.2.4 OpenTX X9D Plus with multi-module. Okay, so we're going to go download firmware. You can download the firmware, you can download SD card contents, all that stuff. But we're going to do the firmware first. So we're going to hit firmware. It'll download our firmware. It's going to ask us where we want to save it at or save it as. I'm going to save it as OpenX9D plus multi-module 2.2.4. I save everything on desktop because I hate navigating, looking for things, trying to remember where I put it. So I'd rather see it on my desktop than I know where it's at. So what we do is we click save. And I think I've already got this saved in my system already, but we're going to go ahead and let it resave it. We'll see if it is saved. So it'll download. Once it's downloaded, it'll say, do you want to write the firmware to the radio now? I'm going to say yes. So let's say I've backed my radio up, which I have not done because the radio doesn't have anything on it, so I'm not worried about it. But if you've backed your radio up, you've backed up all your models and settings, you're going to go ahead and you're going to click yes. And it's going to ask you, do you want to use the firmware start screen? Now you can choose any screen you want. You can choose library, or you can use another start screen, and it'll ask you where's that start screen located or whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and use the default one. So I'm going to click this bottom right box that says write to TX. Boom. And right now it's writing the firmware in the background. You can see that little bar in the back doing its little thing. Go ahead and close this box out. And it says flashing done. That's all it takes to write this firmware to this radio. That's it. That radio is done. Other than calibrating those sticks and those pots again, which I'm going to show you how to do here in a second. That is it. But let's do the SD card contents as well, because you're going to want those. You're going to want a backup of the firmware version on that SD card in case anything ever happens to that radio. You can back up right directly from the SD card and restore your radio. So we can go back over here to downloads again, which is that down looking arrow next to the gear cog. We're going to download SD card contents. All right, and it's going to go probably to the website, and it's going to show me where the SD card stuff is and all that, and I got to go get it. But in most cases, a lot of these SD card contents, they come as zip files, which means you're going to have to extract the zip file, extract it to the SD card. So the one we're looking for, if you look up there, you've got Taranis X9 2.2.10 all the way through 2.2.21. So what I usually do is I look for the latest one. And the 2.2 version 0021 is the latest one if you base it by the date, July 12th, 2019. So we're going to pull that one out because it's going to match the firmware we just put on the radio. Now it doesn't matter when you do this, but you can do this before you flash the firmware or after you flash the firmware. It doesn't matter. So it's got about 35 seconds left downloading right there in the bottom corner. So we're going to wait till that happens. And like I said, it puts all the files, the firmware files and things like that, and all the SD card contents that's needed for operating this radio the way you would like it to operate is going to be on that SD card now. Now, if you want to get sound packages, you can get sound packages. You get those from the OpenTX website as well. You just go to downloads, look for sound packages in your radio, download the sound package, and you would extract all of those files of that sound package. After you extract them, you copy all those files and you place them on the SD card in the sounds folder. There will be a sounds folder on this SD card after we put these SD card contents on there, but we have to have the contents on there first. So we're still downloading. And believe it or not, my internet's much better now. I know last month you heard me say that I was having internet issues here, and we were bad. But we've changed companies and everything's going well now. So now that's open, so we can go ahead and open that file up. Whenever the computer decides to open it. It's supposed to open when not showing folder. Okay, now it's opening up, finally. So those are all the contents. You see those? So what we need to do is we need to copy all of those over to our SD card, which I told you already was my drive F. So give me a second to do that here. I'll go ahead and highlight them. Shift. All right. And we'll put all of those on my D. I'll put them right, boom. So now those are going to copy to my SD card. And it takes a few minutes for it to do that, of course. Because that is a lot of files. That's 2,111 items being copied to that SD card currently. And we can see that's going to take a while. And it's probably going to take a while because I left my SD card in the radio to do this. Excuse me. If you take your SD card out of your radio to do this and you just plug it in your computer, it is much faster, believe me. It takes forever for it to send or format SD cards to that radio. It's a slow speed thing, I guess. But like I said, make sure before you flash your firmware, like we just did a few minutes ago, that you always check multi-module at least. As you learn the radio, there's going to be some more of those boxes that you may be interested in checking, that you're definitely going to want to check, you know, for different things that you're going to want to do. But I'll tell you right now, that radio right there, when you purchase this radio, you really will not need to purchase another radio. You know, they have what you say, the bind and fly radios, or bind and fly airplanes that are out there. They've got some UMX airplanes that are pretty cool, you know, those little mini airplanes you buy from Horizon Hobby and stuff. They run Spectrum. The UMX airplanes, unfortunately, you can't take the receiver out of those and put an FrSky receiver in them because they are integrated into the control board. So since they're integrated in the control board, you're basically screwed unless you're running Spectrum. Well, that radio right there has the ability to allow you to fly Spectrum airplanes as well, but still have the complete functions of the OpenTX radio system. So the radio system that you are going to become familiar with in running your Tyrannus from day to day, you're going to be setting those airplanes up exactly the same way that you set up all your FrSky airplanes. It's real simple. I personally like the OpenTX a lot better because I think it's a lot more customizable. To me, it's easier to use. I've been out of Spectrum for a few years, and since I've jumped back into Spectrum one time to fly a UMX airplane by mistake, I found that radio was a lot harder to set up, and I just can't seem to get it as right as I can with the Tyrannus radio. The Tyrannus radio is much more customizable and allows me to do a lot more things. But this thing's still writing to the SD card, believe it or not. We're only at like 22%. Yeah, 23%. So that looks like that's probably going to be a while. But it is what it is, and there's really nothing we can do about it at this point. But I guess what I can do is just go ahead, since we're waiting on that, is we'll just go ahead and instead of doing the second video, we'll just go right into the second video on top of this. So while that's writing, here's some things I want to show you. Here's the reason you put multi-module in there. There's various other radio systems out there, whether you have Futaba, Walkera. If you've heard of that. It's starting to get kind of popular. You have DSMX, DSM2. You're going to want to fly those airplanes. Well, the cool thing about the Taranis radio is it does have a JR bay in the back, which allows you to install an external module. And as you can see right there where it says X9D, you can remove that cover and you can actually install a module back there that will allow you to fly different types of radio systems as well. When you go into the radio settings of the radio, it will allow you, as you're setting up your airplanes, it'll ask you, okay, what are you flying? Well, if you've got the multi-module package in there, it'll ask you, okay, are you going to fly, you know, the X series receivers, or are you going to, you can select it and you can make it fly DSM, DSMX, DSM2, the fast for Futaba. You can fly Walkira. There's PPMs. You can just about select whatever you want to select, and you'll select it based on the aircraft that you're going to fly, and then you will bind the radio to that aircraft under that specific radio frequency. Then every time you go to that specific airplane, that radio will automatically switch to that frequency through the external module and allow you to fly that airplane. So if you want to fly Spectrum airplanes, there's a couple of different ways you can go. Hobby King, as a matter of fact, they make what they call these orange modules. You ever see those? Okay, that will fly DSM, DSMX, and this one here actually is like a multi-module. So because this is their newest version, it flies not only that, but it'll fly things like Walkira and all kinds of stuff. Their newest version has switches on the back that does various things. This isn't very good, this new module. They used to be fantastic, but the problem with this is if you want to fly Spectrum, it'll fly all your Spectrum airplanes all day long, except some of the UMX planes. Some of the newer UMX planes, when you go to bind this to the UMX aircraft, you'll get all the functions working completely good on the aircraft, everything except throttle. I don't know why. I looked at some of the forums and stuff, and everybody's kind of thinking that it's got something to do with the firmware being messed up in these things, because some of those integrated boards, it just won't operate the throttle, which is a bummer. But if you can get your hands on an older version, probably through eBay or something, of this orange module, the one that does not have the switches on the back, if it does not have the switches on the back, it will fly the UMX planes and all the other Spectrums as well, but it won't fly Walkira because they just came out with that in this module. But it'll fly any of the Spectrum airplanes all day long through your Taranis radio. No problems whatsoever. The other options you can go with is you can get what they call a multi-module. This one here can be purchased on Banggood. This is a multi-module, and this little thing here flies like 20-some different radio frequencies, including FrSky. But you're going to want to use it for just things like DSMX or maybe some Futaba airplanes or something, you know, something like that. But you can pop this in the back of the radio in the module bay. Those pins have to line up with the pins in the radio, and you got to be real careful because sometimes, you know, the way these things are made, they can be off just a little bit, which means you're going to want to kind of straighten pins or kind of move them around a little bit in your radio or whatever to get this thing to easily slide in. If you're trying to pop this in the back of the radio and there's any resistance, stop. Because the last thing you want to do is break one of those pins off in your radio. You want to get it in there. This one here I don't really care for too much. Like I said, got it from Banggood. Don't really care for it. You can see how the case looks. It looks like it was made in a 3D printer. I bought the case separately because when you buy the module, all you get is the control board with the antenna. Then you got to buy the case separately, kind of put it together, which is kind of a pain, and then it snaps into the back of your radio. And then when you go to set up your model or whatever, and you're going to that model settings page to, you know, select what radio you're flying in it, you know, you go in there, of course, to use the multi-module. You got to shut off the external module, and you've got to turn on, or shut off the internal module, turn on the external module, and then select the radio frequency to fly with that airplane. And a lot of people ask, do I have to do that now every time I fly my airplanes? Do I have to switch back and forth? No. If you set a model up for a specific way to fly, if you set it up to fly with the internal module, which is the FrSky, every time you select that model, it's going to automatically switch to that module and fly FrSky. If you set it up for the DSM2 or the DSMX, every time you switch to that airplane, it's automatically going to switch to the module. that's going to allow you to fly DSM-2 or DSM-X or whatever it may be, you know, your Spectrum radio systems or whatever you've selected. It doesn't matter. I don't care for this one too much. I haven't used it. I just was like, yeah, whatever. But the one I do use, I've got it in my X10S, and this works really good. I fly these little UMX planes with it, and it's pretty cool because I set it up just like I would any other plane through OpenTX. This is called iRange X. Don't remember where I bought it from though. I think I got it from Banggood. Bought that thing. It cost about 40 bucks. Popped it in the back of the radio. That thing flies up to about 40 different radio frequencies. It's ridiculous. It'll fly all of them. You know, Fataba. It'll fly DSM, DSM-2, DSM-X, all that stuff. Walkera, all kinds of things. All kinds of things. Just it's amazing what it'll do. But you just pop that in the back of your radio and you just go fly. No big deal. Nothing special you need to do other than just making sure you're going through your model settings and setting up the right radio frequency. But like I said, that was about 40 bucks. Popped it in the back of the radio. And when you do that, you are no longer limited. You fly anything you want. The only issue that I did find is because the FrSky radio systems, they do have telemetry. So they will give you RSSI signals and warnings and things like that. You get a lot of warnings because, you know, the DSM-X that I'm flying out of, these little UMX airplanes, they don't have the ability to transmit the proper telemetry from their, you know, they're not set up to do that. They weren't designed to do that, to transmit to your radio telemetry. So the radio is constantly giving you warnings that you've got low radio signal. But there's a way to go into the radio and shut RSSI warning off. It's a little box in there when you're setting up the model. You know how you check those little boxes in there when you're setting up models and stuff? Well, there's a box in there that you can check or uncheck that says RSSI warning. Well, uncheck it, and it'll quit yelling at you every time you're flying your airplane. No big deal. But that works very good for flying the UMS airplanes. It will operate the throttle just fine on all of them. I did purchase it for that reason because the orange module I purchased wouldn't do it. But it's pretty awesome. Like I said, with the FrSky radio, there's no other radio you're going to need to buy. So don't worry about having to go out and buying a DX6 or whatever you got to fly, or DX6i or whatever, like I did to fly my UMX airplane, and then later found out they had multi-modules that would support it. I got kind of discouraged because the first thing I bought was this, and it didn't work. So I didn't think any of them were going to work until I read some forums, and they told me, yeah, you just need to get this one or that one, or have an older version of that Orange RX, and then you're off and running. But it's pretty simple to set up, like I said, and I'll go ahead and show you since we're here. I'll show you on this radio how to actually set up
OpenTX.
your radio system on a multi-module. I'll show you what I'm talking about, where it's at. So if you have an airplane set up, and I'll show you what I've got here. I've got one here, Little Tim I call it. It's my little UMX Little Timber. I'll select that model. It's already given me an RSSI warning because I didn't disable it. But anyway, if I go to where you set your models up, and like I said, when you go to, you know, where you go to bind it, you just go to where it says internal RF. You want to make sure you shut it off, like I did. And then the mode I want to fly it in is multi for the external RF, DSM X. That's what I set it up as. Now, when you set up DSM X through a multi-module, if you've got multi-module in your system, like I do here, you do not need to bind your radio to the receiver like you do Spectrum stuff. You still have to put the bind plug in the receiver on that airplane, but you don't have to hold a button on the radio and turn it on to get it to bind. You would still bind the receiver like you would any FrSky thing by selecting bind, letting it beep, plug your battery in on your airplane with the bind plug plugged into the receiver, and it will bind to that DSM-X receiver. So that's what I like. Nothing changes. Everything still works just like it does with FrSky. You just got to make sure you turn your internal module off, turn the external one on, and select the radio frequency you want to fly, bind that sucker, and move on down the road. But we've got our SD card contents loaded, so we're ready to go with this. As we can see, everything's gone onto the SD card. I can see we're looking at it right now on drive D. Everything's on there like we want it to be. I'm not sure if there's sounds, if it automatically loaded a sound pack. Let's see, that'd be cool if it did. Well, it looks like it did. So you can go up here and select EN, which is English. Open it up. Let's see if there's sound files in there. There sure is. So we're good. We don't even have to go get a sound pack. We're ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is we need to calibrate that radio. That's important. When you install firmware on a radio, always calibrate your controls before you fly that radio. So here's how we're going to do that. Now that we've got everything installed, everything's done, we can go ahead and disconnect the radio, turn it off. After we disconnect, turn the radio off, turn the radio back on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And there's my sounds. When you do this SD card contents, you get the sounds as well. So the next thing that we're going to do here is get a long press menu to go into the radio settings. You're going to hit page until you go to calibration. Let's go back to that. Let's see. Okay, we can see our version 2.2.4. So we know our firmware went in good. Okay, everything went fine. So we can go ahead and page to the next one. Keep page until you get to calibration. There it is. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hit enter to start. And it's going to tell you what to do. So you hit enter. It says center all the sticks and all your sliders and all your pots. Your pots are your little dials up there. So all your sliders, you got your left one, put it in the middle. Put your right one in the middle. You know, these little sliders on the side here. Right here. Put them all in the middle. Put your pot sticks in the middle. And once you get everything there in the middle and your sticks are in the middle, then you're going to want to hit enter again. Now it's going to tell you to move the pots and the sticks. Now what it means by that is it wants you to move the sticks all in a full motion circle as far as it will go. So you're going to do all of your sticks that way. And I just kind of move them all at the same time, just move them around just once or twice. And then I like to recenter. And then I do the same with all your switches. Go all the way up, all the way down, back to center. Do the same with the other side, down, up, back to center. Take your pots all the way down, all the way to the side, back to center. Same with the other one, down, side, back to center. Once you do that, then you'll hit enter again. You're done. You can see your sticks are all centered and everything. You see how the center dots are all lined up because my sticks are all in the center. All my pot switches look fairly center. Everything looks good. So you can just exit out of that. So now you've completely updated the radio. You've installed OpenTX on it like you're supposed to. We've calibrated the radio. We've installed the SD card contents. And you have also learned that you can install multi-modules, except that one, in your radio to be able to fly your Spectrum bind and fly radios with your Tyrannus system. No problem at all. On a side note, some of you guys out there are flying some of the older JR radios that do have module bays in them and you just hate to give up that radio, but you know Spectrum sucks and you're tired of crashing airplanes. Good news. FrSky has an XJT module you can plug into the back of that radio if it has a module bay, and you can still get the comforts of your own JR radio that you're used to and you refuse to get up or give up, but you can fly it with the security and the safety of FrSky radio systems now. So that's something to check out too for you guys that are flying the JR radios but you want to move to FrSky frequencies. Well, there you go. They've got something for you too. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Stay tuned. There'll be more videos to come in the future. I also do these videos too based on what people ask for. If I see an interest and some people are asking questions, I'll do a video. So don't hesitate to ask questions or put something up there that you're not familiar with or whatever that you need some help with. If I don't know it, I'm going to research it. I'm going to put it in layman's terms so you can understand it. Have a great day.